Welcome back, friends. We are in the middle of the final day of the Quintessence Virtual Summer Choral Festival, and so welcome back. And I am so happy to welcome our guest for this session, as most of you know, because most of you were registered already, pre-registered for this summer. This time, this week, July of 2020, we were to be giving the New Mexico premiere of an absolutely fantastic work, The Notebooks from Leonardo da Vinci by Jocelyn Hagen. And Jocelyn was going to come and be with us for that occasion. And of course, times being what we are, that's on hold until next summer. That is our plan for Quintessence Summer Festival in 2021. But when we went virtual, one of the first people I got in touch with was Jocelyn to ask if she might just sit down with us and chat about the piece and help us to continue to be excited about that project. Jocelyn is someone whose music I have known and admired for a long time. And as I thought back, we, in some form or fashion, have featured her music on the festival for the last 3 summers. In 2018, we opened the concert with a very cool piece of hers called Slow Burn, which folks just loved performing. And last summer, our Scholars Chorus did another piece of hers. And I'm just such an admirer of her and her music, and I'm so excited about this project. So Jocelyn, we're so happy that you're here with us to talk about Leonardo. We know that you'll be with us next summer in person, but we're excited to hear about it. So welcome and take it away.
Hi. Thank you for that wonderful introduction, and also congratulations on just a wonderful virtual choral festival for this week. It is no easy feat to do something like this. So congrats on having it become such a success and to have it be shared by so many people. That's really wonderful. So I am joining you from Minnesota, my home state, and it's a very hot day here, but probably not as hot as it is down there in New Mexico. But yeah, I am going to talk to you about the Notebooks of Leonardo da Vinci, this piece that was, continues to be a big part of my life, but it was a project that took me about 4 years, from the very beginning of an idea until it premiered in 2019. And so mainly what I'm going to be talking about today is I'm going to go through the libretto and read through the text, because as a composer who writes a lot of vocal music, the text is always very important to me. And it takes me a long time to pick out a text to set to music. In fact, I said that this Leonardo da Vinci piece took me 4 years. Over 3 years of that was just conception and gathering ideas and texts, and then and starting to craft what the piece would look like. And then really the composition, the time it took to write the actual notes and all of that, was really only about 6 to 8 months. Because once I've discovered, oh, this is what the piece means, and this is what I'm really trying to say, then the music comes really naturally, because I can hear it in my head already. And one of the first movements that I could really hear in my head, and that I could also see at the same time as I could hear the music, was the movement, the Vitruvian Man. And so we will get to watch that movement today as part of this talk, because you got to see part of it, right? And so I'll go ahead and I'll talk through the libretto, and when we get to the Vitruvian Man, we will be able to watch the premiere performance by the Metropolitan Symphony Orchestra and the Minnesota Chorale. And that happened in March 30th and 31st in 2019. So you can look forward to that. This project was a huge endeavor, and I had no idea what I was getting myself into. And honestly, I gotta say, that was part of the fun of it. I love tackling problems that I have no idea how to solve. That might sound crazy, but it really excites me. I love pushing music forward, pushing the art form forward. And so I'm constantly thinking of different ways that I can make choral music, or any kind of music, that's truly unique and different, and says something new and pushes you to think about something in a different way. I'm really drawn to creating art that speaks in that way. And so when I had this idea, for the notebooks of Leonardo da Vinci, it really started with the technology. So in 2014, I was writing an opera, Test Pilot, and it's actually a dance opera. So I was collaborating with a dear friend of mine named Penelope Free. And we were writing an opera based on the birth of flight. So it's all about the Wright brothers. And it was just such a cool project. But we had also talked about having projections as part of the visual aspect of it, to be projected behind the dancers and singers and such, especially because there are so many amazing images. One of my favorite images is the actual the picture that they took of that first flight with the Wright, with, I think it was Orville in the flyer up high. We also did a projection of the telegram that they sent when they had achieved first flight. So I wasn't new to projection before the Notebooks of Leonardo da Vinci, but in my research for the opera, I was introduced to this new software that was developed in Minnesota called Mosaic. This software was developed by Ion Concert Media, and what it allows for is the syncing of video to live music without the use of a click track. And this is really a fascinating and awesome thing, because if any of you have performed with video with something that needs to sync, you might have done something with a click track, or your conductor has. And oh man, I've seen some of those shows. Like I went to go see Home Alone when Minnesota Orchestra did it. And there were times when you could tell that the conductor up there was just like, you guys are a little bit behind, stay with me, and she's watching the click, she's basically watching a big computer screen that is the score with that tick going by and trying to make sure that everybody stays right in. And you know what? I've heard from musicians that is an incredibly stressful way to perform. And it also takes away, the musicality. It doesn't let you play. You're so worried about staying in time that you can't play a phrase from your heart, with the beauty that you are capable of as a musician. So that's what makes this technology so awesome. And if you're interested in learning more about the technology, I highly encourage you to watch my TED Talk. So my friend Adam is going to share with you the link, the video link to my TED Talk on YouTube. If you don't follow it here, you can always search for it later. It's really easy to find. But yeah, especially if learning about the technology is really interesting to you, I highly recommend checking it out. And you also get to watch the first movement, kind of broken up into sections and then played continuously. So if you want to watch the first movement as well, you can go to my TED Talk, check it out. Okay, so that's that. What else was I going to say? Oh yeah, so I learned about the technology and thought, okay, there is a huge potential here for a really cool piece of music. So then I started looking for great subject matter. And I came across the idea of, I was learning about Leonardo da Vinci and looking at his notebooks, and they were coming to the Minneapolis Institute of Art. So I could go look at them actually in person. And 2019 is the 500th anniversary of the death of Leonardo da Vinci. And I was like, oh, all these things, tick, tick, tick. Not only did he have lots of great text that I could source and set to music, but I mean, the vast number of images that I could use from his notebooks for the video was just astounding. And what turned out to be really, really wonderful about this is that because it's so old, even those notebook images, everything was in the public domain except for the Vitruvian Man image. So I did pay 500 euro to a Italian museum in order to license that image so that I could use it on the cover of the score, because I just love it. But then, I also licensed it to be used in the video, and then, it turns out it's not used in the video. Oh well. So that was kind of funny how that ended up to be, but that was really great that in the end, that was really the only thing I had to pay for the rights to create the video, along with a couple other things that I'll talk with when I talk about specific movements. But yeah, that was the only image from the notebooks specifically that I had to source and pay for. So yeah, so the other thing I just had no idea what to do about was, how do I create video? I had never done that before. And so basically I just cold called, emailed a video artist that I had followed his work for a while and thought he was really great. And that is Isaac Gale. And so he's also in Minneapolis. And so that was easy. So we were local and we could meet and talk about the piece. But you should check out his website too. He's worked with Bon Iver, the Doomtree people. That's how I really knew him, is he had done a few videos for Dessa, who is an incredible artist that I've collaborated with. She was actually the other writer of Controlled Burn, the one that you did in 2018. So I kind of found Isaac through Dessa a bit, and just thought he was awesome and really great. And originally he was just going to do the Vitruvian Man. That was the one I had originally set out to ask him to do. And then it turns out in the end, he just did the whole thing for me, essentially. I also had a friend do the choral movements, the Practice, The Greatest Good, and Perception. Those videos were all done by another friend of mine named Justin Schell, who is the guy who did the projections for Test Pilot. So you could see it all kind of, lots of different people, lots of different connections that made it all happen. And then the other key thing was figuring out, okay, so I figured out how to make the video. Now, how do I pay for the video? Because I'm sure you can imagine this is a huge scale project, and I never knew what the ending budget was going to be. I kept asking video people and even at IM Concert Media, how much is this going to cost me? And no one could ever give me a number. So I remember there was one point where I just said, I've got to take the leap and just trust that I'm going to figure out how to fund it. And by that point, I was so in love with the project and I couldn't imagine stepping away from it. So I just committed. That was a bit of a tough conversation to have with my husband. I'm going to do this project. I have no idea how much it's going to cost, and I hope it doesn't put us into debt, but I'm in love with it and I think I can do it. So I'm very grateful that he believed in me so much and said that was okay. But how I did end up funding it was through consortium. So Quintessence is one of the members of the consortium. So I think it's 20 groups sign on to be a part of this consortium. It was led by the Minnesota Chorale and the Metropolitan Symphony Orchestra here in Minnesota. And then University of Michigan Ann Arbor was also the lead commissioners of the chamber version, which was such a great idea. Dr. Eugene Rogers, I don't know if you know him, but he's at University of Michigan. And he was the one that convinced me to do a chamber ensemble version. And I was like, oh, that's going to be a lot more work, but yeah, I should do it. Oh, and another cool thing to mention about University of Michigan Ann Arbor, they just recorded my oratorio, A Mass, and that will be released. They've recorded it. We're in the next processes of that, and then it's going to be released probably in 2021. But I'm so looking forward to that. The performance was absolutely stunning in Michigan when was that? Oh, I can't even remember. My head's a blur. But last year, 2019. Yeah, it was in the fall of 2019 that they did it and they recorded it. But I do have a link for one of the movements from A Mass that they released, and that's the Agnus Dei. And one of the coolest parts of the Agnus Dei is the cello parts. There's a solo cellist, and he's incredible. And then he's surrounded by a quartet of cellos, and they're just fantastic players from the University of Michigan. And I think two of those cellists in the ensemble were 18 or 19, just like freshmen, and they just rocked it. And that's a fun movement because it really does have, you might have noticed that I I come from a singer-songwriter background, and I really love pop music and rock music, and that finds its way into my compositions more and more regularly. And it really is true to who I am, I believe. So just like the Vitruvian Man rocks a little bit, so does the Agnus Dei, I think. So hopefully you can enjoy that performance as well. Another cool video that I can share with you is this one called Hummingbird. And that was a collaboration with an electronic musician friend of mine here in Minnesota, Spearfisher. And it's a really cool piece. I think it's the only choral work to have a keytar solo in it. And so I'm really proud of that. I think that's pretty awesome. So please check out that piece. It's about 10 minutes long. It feels like a grand kind of choral symphony, kind of with electronics, and a lot of fun. So you should check that out. All right. Well, I think I'm ready to start talking you through the piece. Do I have any questions so far? I haven't gotten any of the notes from my friend Adam here, but if anyone does have a question about, keytar, where you play, it's like a piano. Okay, no questions yet. That's great. So I'm going to get started on talking through the notebooks of Leonardo da Vinci. So the first section is called Painting and Drawing. First movement. Oh, painter. A painter is not admirable unless he is universal. A painting is a poem seen but not heard. A poem is a painting heard but not seen. Hence, these two poems, or two paintings, have exchanged the senses by which they pierce the intellect. I loved this statement so much when I read it, because it reminded me of what I think the music and the video does in this multimedia symphony. They enhance each other. You hear things differently, you see things differently because they're together and because they were conceived together. So in my TED Talk, I really talk about the opening, which is about the creative process. And in the end, the notebooks of Leonardo da Vinci, to me, really is a celebration of creativity. That's what this piece is truly about. And so you start the whole thing with a flute solo, or I could say it's really a flute duet, because the flute is playing a duet with the animation of Leonardo's handwriting. And it's super cool. What's also really neat is that Leonardo da Vinci wrote from right to left. And you see that in the animation. A couple of my other favorite moments in this is that, so he's writing and then it stops, and writing and stops. And for any of you who are creative, which I'm sure is everyone listening to this, because you have creativity everyone has creativity in their own way, right? That it often comes that way, right? You have the little glimpse of an idea and then, oh wait, oh yeah, okay. And then it's, there are those stops and starts. And I think that's really a true way to describe how that works. And then another thing that happens is that he's going along, and then he crosses something out. And I love that too. I loved showing from the very beginning of this work that nobody's perfect. Not even Leonardo da Vinci is perfect. In fact, he's an artist who is celebrated as much for his victories or for his failures as his successes. We know about all the things that he tried to do and failed, and yet we still consider him one of the greatest geniuses of all time. So showing that right away in the beginning, I felt like it was saying, you can reach genius even if you screw up. You can keep trying. And that's what was so great about him, is that he never gave up. His curiosity never ended. He was a curious man into his 70s, and it kept going and going and going. I thought that was an interesting thing too in all my research, which now might be a great time to show the image of all the books I bought for research. I did a lot of research on Leonardo da Vinci. But one of the things I loved learning was that he didn't start these notebooks until he was about in his mid-30s. And when I started, there they are. Look at all those books. I did not read all of them. I think I read a third of most of them. But yeah, I mean, just fantastic stuff, and yeah, a great research topic. But yeah, I loved that he didn't start these notebook pages until he was in his mid-30s, and that's about how old I was when I started this. And I was thinking, oh, so he was my age, and from the point of when he started writing those pages down, now we have over 5,000 pages that have survived, which makes you think, how many did he actually do? Because not all of them could possibly have survived. And another really cool thing, I was talking earlier about how some of the notebook pages, in fact, it was the Codex Leicester that made it to the Minneapolis Institute of Art, and I got to go see them, and I was so fascinated to see them. And if you have seen some of them, you know what I'm talking about. In this piece especially, you think they're larger than life, these big pages, but really they're like that big, and his handwriting is teeny tiny, and so often he would fill every tiny space of those pages. He would, and he'd start writing sideways, and then he'd turn it over and write all over the back page too. So the way they were displayed, in a darker lit room, was encased in glass, so you could go around and see both sides of it. And those pages are so thin that you can see through as well, the writing on the other side. If you ever have a chance to see these notebook pages, they truly are stunning. So it was definitely an inspiration to see those up close and personal in real life. But yeah, and if you want to learn more about that first movement, painting and drawing, just watch the TED Talk, because I talk about it really specifically. All right, the second movement is called practice. Those who are in love with practice without knowledge are like the sailor who gets into a ship without rudder or compass, and who never can be certain whither he is going. Practice must always be founded on sound theory, and to this, perspective is the guide and the gateway. And without this, nothing can be done well in the matter of drawing. We all know about practice, right, as musicians? I love that he talks about this, and he talks about it at great length, actually. I had a lot of different quotes on practice that I was considering for the libretto of this. And so what I loved thinking about with this text is highlighting his practice sketches, because that was one of the things he did in his notebooks, is he would practice drawing the things that he was going to paint. So we have, I think it's 11 images total of practice drawings of the Last Supper, which is really, really neat. So one of the things that happened this summer, I figured it out in the spring, so almost a year before the premiere, was that I really needed to go to Milan. It was going to be a necessity. I needed to go to Italy to do research. And I was really hoping to see The Last Supper while I was there, but I didn't get tickets early enough, because that sells out months in advance, I found out. But anyway, I needed to go to Milan. I needed to go to this museum that's called the Leonardo 3 Museum. And if you've been to Milan and been there, awesome. But if you're planning on going to Milan someday, you must check out this museum. It's really cool. And while I was there, they had this great interactive exhibit with a touch screen that talked about all the different images, the practice images of drawings of the Last Supper. And they would talk about it, where it was from. And you know how the Last Supper has been repainted over and over because Da Vinci was experimenting with paint, different types of paint. I think that's the story. And the type that he used just didn't last. It didn't last. So they keep having to touch it up and try to recreate the original. And I think if you go see it in person, it's just a shell of what it once was. And so this museum decided to try to do a digital remastery of what they believe the Last Supper looked like when he was just done painting it. And so what's really cool about this movement visually is that you'll see the practice drawing, and then often right after that, you'll see what it looks like in the Last Supper, as it is today. And then at the very end of the piece, you see of the movement, I should say, you see the Last Supper as it looks today. And then it transforms into this digital recreation of what they believe the Last Supper looked like when he was done painting it. And it's just beautiful, beautifully vivid, and it's just a really, really cool thing. And also what's neat is this movement practice, I actually wrote it during that week in Milan. So I knew it was meant to be when I found an Airbnb with a piano in Milan. So that was what I did. I went to Milan for a week and went to the museum all day, and then came back and I finished the libretto. That was one of my main assignments during that week. But then I also wrote that movement practice. It was written in Milan. And then I would get tiramisu sometimes, just because why not? All right, movement number 3, ripples. This is one of, it's so hard to pick favorites in this, but ripples is really a special movement. Here's the text. Just as a stone flung into the water becomes the center and cause of many circles, and as sound diffuses itself in circles in the air, so any object placed in the luminous atmosphere diffuses itself in circles and fills the surrounding air with infinite images of itself, and is repeated the whole everywhere and the whole in every smallest part. One of my favorite chapters that I read about Da Vinci, I think it was in the book Learning from Leonardo. It was a chapter on water and how Da Vinci studied water and at what great depth he studied water. He was fascinated by it. And I think he realized that it was a building block of life, like that it was a real foundation for what life was, which was way ahead of his time. There are so many things like that that he kind of nudged at or believed and thought that were just way ahead of his time. And that was one of them, was the importance of water and what it really was. And also apparently, I think Florence used to flood a lot. And so he was interested in the destructive nature of water and how to control it. So those were all things he studied. In fact, the Codex Leicester was a lot about water. So I knew when I was writing this piece that I wanted to do a movement that was based on water. And I was just so thrilled with what Isaac Gale, the video artist, came back with for this movement. It's images of water, and it's absolutely stunning. And the way it syncs with the music is also really stunning. So that's what makes that movement so special, is the images of the water and just the way they sync with the music. It's a true joy. And the music, it's some of my favorite musical moments in the whole thing as well. There's a great section for the treble voices, the sopranos and altos in 3-part harmony. That just is my heart. I grew up listening to my mother and her 2 sisters sing in harmony. So 3-part harmony treble is, it's like home to me. So that also has a big part in the 3rd movement, ripples. So yeah, I'm sure you'll enjoy that when you get a chance to learn it. Oh, number 4, the greatest good. The greatest good of all is knowledge. Obstacle cannot crush me. Every obstacle yields to firm resolve. The acquisition of any knowledge is always useful to the intellect, because it will be able to banish useless things and retain those that are good. For nothing can be loved or hated unless it is first known. I feel like this text is so timely, and we all just keep searching for knowledge, for what to do in our current situation. And, that's why I've put so much faith in scientists, figure this out, figure out what we can do and how to work through this pandemic and this problem. But so that was a text that just really spoke to me, and I thought was worth including. And the images for this one are really, these were created by Justin Schell, the video was, and it's really just, I wanted to show how messy a lot of his notebook pages were. How he was just sketching things and trying things out, and and he would draw over things. He's got a beautiful caricature or portrait, and then something that, and then like circles and stuff that kind of overlay on top of it. I thought that was really interesting that his brain thought that way, that he didn't need like a page for this and a page for that, fit it all on there. So I wanted to just show that, show some of those pages as they really are. So that's the images that you see in that fourth movement. And also, just so you know, movements 2, 4, and 8 are the choral movements, the a cappella movements. And then movement 6 is for orchestra or chamber ensemble only. All right, number 5, we have made it to the Vitruvian Man. The text for this is really long, but I must also say that this was the first text I read in which I knew how the music was going to sound, because it immediately sang to me, which is something that often happens with pieces of text, is that, oh, I know how that's supposed to sound. And that was this part, from the roots of the hair to the bottom of the chin is the 10th of a man's height. From the bottom of the chin to the top of his head is 1/8 of his height. From the top of the breast to the top of his head will be 1/6 of a man. I heard that pattern as I was reading it the very first time through. And so that's what it sounds like. It's hard as a choir to make that happen really well. And I also had it, since I feel it spoken, it has this interesting effect where part of the choir is singing it and part of the choir is speaking it, which I think comes off pretty neat. But so for this movement, yeah, this was one of the first things I could hear and I could see. And what I knew I saw right from the beginning was a real live Vitruvian Man. And I just happened to know the right guy. So Steve Swanson. Yes. No, not Steve Swanson. That's a different Steve. Steve Schroeder is the Vitruvian Man, and he is a dancer, and he actually danced the role of Wilbur Wright in the dance opera when we took it on tour in 2017. So I had worked with him as a dancer several times before, and then I learned that he was growing out his hair. And so it was so meant to be, and he's just the nicest guy. But yeah, so that's what I knew. I knew I wanted a real live Vitruvian Man. I knew I wanted it to feel like a music video, like a typical music video. And that was why I approached Isaac Gale about that movement in the first place, was because I wanted it to feel, and the music too is a bit more pop influence. There's the steady beat from the rototoms, which I have a funny story about that later. So yeah, I had this real vision for what I wanted this piece to be. I wanted it to rock out, really, essentially. And I think it does. I actually think this performance that you're about to hear is a little bit slow. I think it rocks even just a tiny bit faster. So just keep that in mind for when you're doing it. All those things that you learn when you get to hear it 8 times within a year. But yeah, I think let's go ahead and show the video, and then I can talk a little bit more about it. Sound good?
Vitruvian, the architect.
Yeah, so that is really one of my favorite movements from the notebooks of Leonardo da Vinci. And so I knew I wanted a live Vitruvian Man, and I knew I wanted an overlay of some of his many anatomical drawings that he did to be overlaid on top of his body. But I didn't know how that was going to be done, and I think Isaac Gale was absolutely brilliant in reversing it so that it was, you know, a darker image of the Vitruvian Man with the white of the drawings over the top. That's all him, and I thought it was brilliant. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed that little performance. I'm going to keep going because I want to make sure we have enough time for questions. The sixth movement, and I actually do have a picture of this, Adam. If you could share the picture of it's Da Vinci's flying machine over a map. That is taken from the video of this movement. Yeah, that one. So everything in that image is from his different pages of his notebook. So you see like a mountain, and then you see all these different buildings. Those are different drawings. And then he's got the flying machine up there. And there's also this round circular, you know, I don't know. He was very interested in architecture, and, you know, did a lot of drawings about that stuff too. He also did a lot of war machines, and everybody, you know, knows about the flying machine. And he actually did a lot of flying apparatus, created a lot of them, a lot of gliders. And so it was really fun to highlight all of that in this movement for the orchestra alone. I know that a lot of times the singers really loved that because they could sit and watch this one, because this is also the one that is most full of animation. So a lot of his little machines that he invented, we actually make them turn and whirl and spill and spin and move, and that it was very labor intensive. So I had a wonderful animator named Joseph Midtune who worked with Isaac Gale on this movement. The seventh movement is called Nature. Though human ingenuity may make various inventions, it will never devise inventions more beautiful, nor more simple, nor more to the purpose than nature does. Because in her inventions, nothing is wanting, nothing is superfluous. Necessity is the teacher and tutor of nature. And I thought this was a perfect way to, as a following movement after invention, just to talk about nature and how Da Vinci really was enthralled with nature and constantly studying it, drawing it, thinking about it. And it's really lovely in this video that you get to see the beautiful, beautiful nature. What's also really cool is how it begins. It's a clarinet solo that starts this movement, and it is in duet, again, like the flute at the very beginning, but this time with an animated bird. And this was something that I sourced from an animation studio in California who had created a little Leonardo da Vinci video, and that was from it. And it's gorgeous because it looks just like Leonardo's drawings of birds in his notebooks. So that's really cool. The eighth movement is called perception. All our knowledge has its origin in our perceptions. And what happened with this movement, I actually had a lot more text that was going to go with this, but I kept repeating that line over and over to me, over and over as I was writing it and singing it. And it kept revealing itself to me. There are so many layers to that statement. And so I ended up just making the whole piece that one statement, that one line. And the video for this is stunning. It's an animation that I licensed from that Leonardo 3 museum in Milan, and it's of eyes. And I did send Adam a picture of the eye. Can we do the picture of the eye? So you'll see the picture, and now imagine that eye blinking and moving around, and that's what the video does. So imagine that eye blinking, and it's absolutely stunning. I loved it. So yeah, so that was one of the other things I had to pay for from the Leonardo 3 Museum, is the licensing of that video. The ninth movement, the final movement, is called Look at the Stars. And Adam, let's go to that other picture of the self-portrait now amidst the night sky. Here's the text. O time, consumer of all things, O envious age, thou dost destroy all things and devour all things with the relentless teeth of years, little by little, in a slow death. If you look at the stars cutting off the rays, you will see those stars so minute that it would seem that nothing could be smaller. It is in fact their great distance that is the reason of their diminution. For many of them are many times larger than the star which is the earth with water. Now reflect what this, our star, must look like at such a distance, and then consider how many stars might be added, both in longitude and latitude, between those stars that are scattered over the darkened sky. Look at the stars. O time. Wisdom is the daughter of experience. I knew early on that that was the line that needed to end the piece. Wisdom is the daughter of experience. And to also have it be with this, it's a presumed self-portrait. Experts will disagree on whether or not it really is his self-portrait, but I like to think that it is. And this is basically how this ends with, what's really cool is that that last image is drawn. So it doesn't just show up, it's drawn in, and then that moon that you see comes directly, and then it ends in a whiteout. So from that. I also loved about this text that he's wrong again in it. He refers to the earth as a star. And I think that's lovely, that, a genius, and he's totally wrong. But yeah, and again, like for this, I told Isaac, I said, I wanted to end with this image, but I had no idea what he was going to do with that. And it's just gorgeous. So in the composition of this final movement, the very first decision I made was the tempo. And it's 120 beats per minute, I think. No, it's faster than that. But I wanted it to be a pop song. I wanted to basically write a pop song for the choir to sing that, how when you're listening to music at that tempo, it's just like, it makes you feel good. Like you can just Yeah, it's like if you're going to go for a run, that's the kind of song you want to have on. And that's what I wanted this to end with, was just this triumphant, happy, look at how amazing all of this is kind of ending. That's what I wanted. And so you hear that bass drum in the back, just like a kick drum, dum, 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 just pounding away. But I should probably open this up to questions. We don't have, a whole lot of time left, and I'm sure you might have questions, and I'm happy to answer them. Anybody? I hope that before you perform it, you have the opportunity to watch the entire video. That's been something that I've been recommending to everyone, just so they get to see the video in its entirety first before doing it. Because otherwise, you have the first rehearsal with the video, and everyone's like, so it's good to watch it first.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Could you talk a little bit more? You alluded to the fact that one of the things that made this possible is this technology that is somehow different from a click track. We have folks that are interested in how exactly that works. And there's actually there's an operator of the video that sits as a member of the orchestra. Is that kind of the idea?
Yeah. So, and because you're part of the consortium, I will bring in a video technician to run it for you, which is really a great perk because you'll get an expert to make sure that it happens all right and everything works perfectly. And because it's like a musical instrument. You have to learn it and you have to practice it. And now, because I have 3 video technicians that have done the show. And so now they all know it well and could teach it to others, but they know when so what they do is they're following along on either an iPad or a computer. I think now most of the time it's been on the computer, but it does have an iPad component. And they're just, it's like I think it can be described as scrubbing in real time, basically. But knowing when all those stops and starts are and little retards and accelerandos, they need to know where all those are and follow the conductor. So yeah, they are playing the video like an instrument. It's super cool. And so yeah, that link to the Mosaic website that Adam shared, you can check it out more up there.
I got to go to a performance of this, folks, in Tucson with True Concord Voices and Orchestra that Jocelyn was also there for. And I'm so glad that I did, because I had been, I think we got in on the consortium last spring, and I got the score the end of about this time last year and started to kind of dig into it. But to see the holistic performance and the extraordinary marriage of the music and the video is one of the things that makes this piece really, really special. So we have that to look forward to. We had a couple of questions come in for you, Jocelyn. One is someone would like for you to talk about your early experiences as a composer. How did you get into this racket?
Yeah, well, I'm very lucky. My mother, there's a lot of music in my family, but my mother is a music teacher and a piano teacher. So I started playing the piano really early. There's a great story about how once I was playing the piano and I would not stop and I wasn't wearing my diaper, so I ruined the stain on the piano bench. That's how much I love to play. So I learned piano very, very early. And my mom also has cassette tapes of me at about the age of 3 singing as well as playing. So I believe I started off as, I'm a singer-songwriter. That's who I am. And because I love great melody. I love to write great melodies. And I think there are several earworms in notebooks that will probably get stuck in your head. And I take that as a really high compliment if they do get stuck in your head.
I totally agree. As you were going through the text, some of those were coming to mind. Did you go away to college intending to major in composition or performance or education or?
Yeah, that's a big conversation so I'm from North Dakota, a small town in North Dakota. And at that time, if you were going to go into music, it was because you were going to be a teacher. I really had no idea that being a composer was something I could do. I remember being in high school and daydreaming in my bedroom, hearing orchestral music in my head, and thinking, wouldn't that be cool if someday I could figure out how to write that down? And then one of the reasons why I chose St. Olaf College in Minnesota was because they had a theory comp degree. And I was like, whoa, so I could go and I could get my vocal music ed degree. I thought I was going to be a choir director, but then also get a theory comp degree. And so I did. So I got both degrees. It took me 5 years and I didn't get to take a single elective, but I did it. And I quickly realized that composition was truly the path for me. I'm just, it's who I am. I just absolutely love it. I love waking up every day and thinking about what I'm gonna do with music today.
That's great.
Mm-hmm.
Someone asks, other than the performance in Tucson that I mentioned, where else has it been performed? Are the folks in Milan interested in planning to present it? And so I would love to hear about all of the performances that have happened so far. And also there were some pretty special performances for you coming up that were delayed by this situation, if you want to talk about those, because they will still happen, I'm sure.
Yeah. So, yeah, right away it was premiered in Minnesota. And then within 2 weeks, it had received performances at the University of Michigan in Ann Arbor, at Yale University in New Haven, and Tuscaloosa, Alabama, Bozeman, Montana State, North Dakota State University. And now I'm listing ones outside of those couple weeks, but what was another big one that was right away early? You see, I'm going to forget. There are 20 groups.
That's great.
My schedule was absolutely insane because I went to all of them and I had to make sure the technology worked flawlessly. But yeah, the big one that was going to happen in April of this year was at Carnegie Hall. National Concerts had decided to take it on and was producing a performance of it. And so it was a group, a festival choir. There were a couple of core groups, but then people from all over were going to come in to sing it, including my family. My mom and her sisters and my cousin were all going to.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
And your birthday, right?
It was on my birthday.
Oh,
I had kind of a rough birthday in April. It was also my 40th birthday.
Oh, wow.
So it was kind of, that was a rough day, but I know it's getting rescheduled. And what also is cool about that, then I'm sure I'll be able to put out another call saying, hey, if you want to come to New York and sing this at Carnegie Hall, 2022. So
absolutely. Yeah. I bet we have folks after they sing it next summer, they'll be all over that. Someone is asking about your favorite pop influences.
Well, if you listen to the Agnus Dei from a Mass that we shared earlier, you're definitely going to hear some Tori Amos, because that was who I grew up listening to. As a pianist, it was hard not to. I just loved what she did on the piano. But other pop influences, I mean, I listen to a lot of top 40, actually. And like Ellie Goulding has a brand new album out that I've been listening to, and Haim. I tend to listen to a lot of female artists. But yeah, it's really wide ranging.
Cool. And one final question: what did you learn that most fascinated you about Da Vinci as a person?
Oh, there were lots and lots of things. He was quite good looking, apparently, and also a great party planner. Apparently, he planned parties.
Those are two very attractive things in a person.
I know. I guess those were maybe just the most kind of surprising things that I learned about him. I would really, if I had that dinner party, of 10 people, Da Vinci would I would have to. I'd want to know, and I'd love to think that he would think this project is pretty cool.
Absolutely, I'm sure he would. Was there to be a performance in Italy? Did I remember that?
Yeah, we tried to make that happen. I was working with Perform International, and it fell through. I couldn't get it. The timeline was too short, and Italy is too expensive, and it was in July, which is too hot.
Yes.
So 3 things that just kind of worked against that. But I hope someday to try again, because I think it would be amazing to have a performance of it in Italy.
Absolutely. Well, this has been so great for us because, you know, we were so disappointed that this didn't happen this summer. And we've got lots of people excited about knowing it and learning more about it and getting ready for it to happen in July of 2021. And you'll be here for that. And we will keep good thoughts about all of that happening just as it is planned to be. So we're so grateful for you being with us today, Jocelyn, and for taking the time. And friends, just a reminder that it is 1 o'clock Mountain Time, and the next event is the panel discussion on the film When I Rise, beginning at 3 p.m. Mountain Time. And that's going to be great. We'd love to see you back here for that. And then, of course, our day and our festival week will be closed at 5 p.m. Mountain with a wonderful singing event from Ken Miedema. So hope to see you back for both of those things. Jocelyn, thanks so much for being with us today. Everyone, good to see you. Bye for now.
Thank you. Bye.